Marcin Piróg, it's lovely to have you on the show. You and I have known each other for many a year. Both went to INSEAD together, and then I had the pleasure of having a wonderful dinner at your home in Warsaw recently. But let's start with, for those of you who don't know you, Marcin, who are you?
And I mean, today I'm an investor and an entrepreneur, a father of four wonderful children, and a runner. Value-wise, I'm a bit of a nomad in life, in work, and in spirit, uh, driven by love and freedom, my most precious values. That pushes me to explore, to take risk, to keep discovering, and to move forward. I've led teams, I built companies, I crossed deserts, and through it all, I've learned that what really matters is staying true to who I am.
Why does it matter to you, Marcin?
You know, when I was a child and teenager, uh, I lived in Poland. At that time, it was under communism, and I really appreciate freedom, and that's something that I believe have driven the whole my life, professional, family life, and the values that I described, and this nomad nature. It's related not only to my genes or ancestors, but to the situation that I lived when I was young, and when we when we started, to learn life, and we had, our dreams. We still have dreams, but and that structured me. And also, the second, what I mentioned, the most precious value is love. I had a lot of love when I was kid in my family, and that's something that that gives you something unique in life. When you go through storms, troubles, problems, that's a unique thing that helps you to be, and to still be there, enjoy life.
Yeah, so the support of the people who are around you, the love that they shared with you was something that helped form you and guide you.
Yeah, I love being with people, and I enjoy when we have fun. But on the other hand, I also I enjoy being just with me, and to have time for reflection, to think, to dream, to think about the past, about the future, and that's why also one of the reasons that drove me to the desert. We'll discuss maybe later about it. But the support from people who are close to you, and for the closest ones, that's something that is unique, and we should all care about it.
A topic I quite frequently address on the pod is this notion of knowledge of self. It's long been said, Socrates, know thyself, and the idea of being with yourself. To what extent has that been important in understanding yourself? Because if I look around, and most studies, research show that most people actually don't have a good understanding of themselves. Is the key to getting to understand yourself being happy with yourself?
Yeah, some 20 years ago, I had a I had a coach who helped me a lot in my life. And it was at the time that I had some big family challenges and was a little bit uh, in a depression or not being able to take decision and we discussed a lot and and one of the one of the questions, the most difficult question I think I got in my life is the one that you asked me at the beginning, but it was 20 years ago. And he said, who are you? Tell me, who are you? And I was just not able to answer. And it gave me no, it was a great lesson because then I started to really think so, uh, beyond this artificial things that you use in leadership in life that there is something deep in within you in yourself and it's really difficult to know to dig and to discover what is really important to you, what drives you, who are you, and I think that that was it was hard lesson. But slowly, he helped me, and he changed my life. I enjoy, right now, being with my partner, with my kids, and to some extent, to vast extent, it was thanks to this guy who asked me, tough questions, huh? And that's I think it's a lot about it. It's to be ready to answer hard questions, questions that it's 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 quite uncommon to hear.
I love it, Marcin. Let's talk about your running because I tend to feel that the time you get to know yourself best is when you're challenged to the core, when you have difficulty, and do you have the stamina? Do you have the resilience? What is the backstory that's helping you to power through? So just talk us through because you did this desert ultra marathon. Talk us through your decision making to do it and what did it teach you in the process?
Yeah, I mean, I love sports, and I played football for almost 50 years until
Congrats.
my hips, collapsed and I couldn't play anymore. But I was also, running, the whole life, and 2 years ago, my friend told me about this Gobi challenge, ultra marathon, 240 kilometers through the desert, through four different deserts within Gobi. And
And by the way, you have to run with all your kit, right? Or tell us the process that goes into where you
yeah,
have to bring your food and
you you are given the water and the tent and all other stuff you have to carry with you. And it's a 6 days run, walk, let's say, because you can run, you can walk, you do both basically. And you carry your food for the whole 6 days journey. So it's at the beginning your backpack is it's quite heavy. Yeah, it's including water. It's about 12 kgs. So that's a real challenge. And the mm, the freeze dried food uh, is the one that that was the most difficult to me because I was not used to that. So the first
it's what
one,
it's like what
yeah,
astronauts take, right?
yeah, exactly. And so it's because of the weight, you cannot carry, uh, things for 6 weeks for 6 days, but something that is light. And especially at the beginning, when your backpack weighs, 12 kgs and you run walk for 8 9 hours a day, you start to have some challenges and uh, and one of the biggest challenge was that the shoulders straps
I was just
slowly
imagining. You
dig
don't
into your
exactly.
skin and and then after 2 or 3 days you really it's really painful. uh, but coming to your questions, out there in the deserts, really nothing distracts you. It's just silence, vast, honest, endless. And in that silence, I feel my freedom, and as I said, I always felt good in my own company. Uh, uh, and that it's a good time to reflect, to think about the past, about choices, about people. Uh, and when you walk through the desert, I can find myself anywhere in any moment of my life. But it's also, good time to reflect about, okay, so what's in front of you, what do you want to achieve, and this discovery that and the things that pushes me to take risks, to keep discovering, and to move forward. Uh, it's also a challenge because you are still like always always searching, always reaching for something just out of your sight, and you are never completely at peace. Uh, but it's wonderful experience because nature-wise, you are it's like coming back to your roots, and you see all these animals living in the wild: horses, camels, sheep, goats, cows, isolated yards scattered across the land, and home to nomadic families. You can see kids on the road that wave you and greet you, and just this nature and space. It's so great that I really feel like you would never feel like that in a place you live in, where you know even at home, and at work. It's something unique and something that attracts you, and obviously it's tough, in terms of physical condition, but you once you finish and accomplish, then you think about, okay, I would love to do something like that again.
It gets addictive. Yeah, one of the things I like to quote, one of my guests was called Michelle Neverez, and she said, to your point, it's a never-ending journey to get to know yourself. And in fact, it takes more than a lifetime to get to know who you are. I had a conversation recently about courage in society and the welcoming of pain, or the embracing of risk. And you've mentioned the word risk, you mentioned the word challenge, and he was referring to Magellan and Christopher Columbus, how they went off without real insurance, certainly not with much assurance as to the safety of their journey and what was going to be the end of it. the argument we had was, well, today's world, we don't have the courage that we had back then.
Mm.
Do you think that to what extent do you think that's true, and to what extent do you think we need more of it in today's world?
I believe it's personal. Uh, it's it depends on the person, and since I have this love for discovery and uh, and also the courage to move when others stay, it's like this nomad spirit that I mentioned. Is to not to be afraid to leave what's comfortable. And we completed the MBA course, and I remember when I first heard about INSEAD and MBA. At that time, I had a nice job, a director at Total in France, and I decided to go for it. I said, I can leave my company, my salary. I take a year off. I will invest in my future, and and that was to at that time also my first kid was just born. He was 1 year old when I started INSEAD. And that was this, living what was comfortable. And many people didn't understand, how come, you have a nice house, you just started to have a, nice family, you have 1 year old kid and nice salary, and you just
You're
give up.
crazy.
Yeah. But at the end, it's like, it paid off, huh? It paid off.
What was it about the year off that you thought paid off? What was the benefit of going?
It, it was this, related to my nature, to this, drive for doing something different, to discover. Uh, my idea was that was at the time I was already 12 years in France, and my idea was to move to the US as the next step, as the next step in my professional career. That was at that time it was my dream. I will push my career in the US, uh, and it almost happened. Yeah, because I had an interview with an American company, but they said, okay, but you will start in Poland because we just made an acquisition in Poland, and after 2 years, you will go to the US as you are in the pool of our young talents, and so we moved to Poland. I moved, back to Poland after 12 years, and it was like that was 1993, and it was 2 years, and it was like 32 years ago, and I'm still in Poland.
There's so many stories that start like that. I went to do a year abroad and I'm still here 30 years later. Or, it was just supposed to be a 6 month trip, but here I am. Um, do you concretely think that things that we learned together at INSEAD had any bearing on your career, your leadership style, business principles, that frameworks that you thought were actually implementable? Is there anything that stands out for you about our year in INSEAD?
Mm. There, there are two sides. One is the pure learning, uh, and I when I started, I was a young engineer, uh, production manager with with experience in manufacturing, but no knowledge about economics, accountancy, all these things and on that side I learned a lot, and my learning curve was very steep, and that obviously helps in your professional life. But the biggest value was on the human side, and this variety of people. I remember, we were. Uh, I was happy to to have you in my group, because there were seven people, the groups of seven people, very different horizons, different countries, different industries, and that's something that to me at that time was it was a discovery. It was a journey because as I said, I spent 7 years with Total in manufacturing, two different companies, but still, I mean, still within the same group and and the same spirit. French people working in production. And then suddenly I found myself with consultants, with bankers, with people from family businesses, very different horizons.
Tennis umpire.
Uh, and it was a revelation to me because and quite big opening. So it's also people sometimes they they think about MBA like is it a good investment? Uh, and I said financial wise, to me it was like 6 months payback, but but this is not important comparing to what you really what you really discover, what you learn, what the people you meet. It's amazing, and it's and that's the biggest value. I believe it's to the way they were teaching us also we spend most of our times, it's not with the books at home, but with among us, all this homeworks that we're supposed to deliver while working together. That's a great value, and that's something that completely changed my professional life. I was right after finishing an MBA, so I became a board member of a big American company. So which is quite the mission impossible in many ways. It's uh, and to sum up, you know the biggest, and I think that the great value of Inside is just to be with people uh, like you, like all these people that we're still in touch with that, because it's hard to believe, but how many years? 30, no, 20, 30, 32 years after. We
Here
have a
we are.
WhatsApp group when I believe there are more than two-thirds of our promotion. It's still active on WhatsApp.
Pretty impressive. Yeah, I mean, well, I obviously spent some time thinking about it as well, and at some level, let's say your kids come to you, Marcin, and say, "Listen, Papa, I want to go to business school. I want to have an MBA like you." To what extent then does the choice of the school become important, and how do you navigate that choice? Because there are lots of different MBAs out there.
Yeah, I have uh, my two sons from my first marriage. They uh, they are they work. They develop their professional careers. They don't have MBA. I believe that they were well educated, and one of the things that I told them when they were well before starting to study is that when you finish your high school, you go abroad. You go out of home, and wherever you study, I will finance your studies until you finish, and then you are on your own. And the reason when I told them that is that I have a brother and a sister, and we all finished universities, but my brother and myself, we went out of our hometown, and my sister stayed and lived with my parents. And I must say that the life in life, we it was much easier to me and to my brother, uh, because we, at a young age, we started to be independent. Obviously, my our parents, gave us some money, but we started to, to deal with that, to budget, to understand how to do that, and it was not the case of my sister, and there's huge impact on then on your life, and that's why I'm very happy that Michel, which is my oldest son, who is right now in Sydney. He makes his professional career, and the other one, Daniel, who is in Abu Dhabi. They are very independent, uh, and they are on their own, and they push a very successful professional career. And I believe that that's something that I would like also to my younger children who are right now in the high school and in the primary school, that also I'd love them, even though it's a different world today,
Different
to
generation.
different generation, different expectations, and very independent. I must say, very, very independent. Very different from our generation and my
Mm.
older children's generation. But I think that independence and the cutoff from the family at certain age, it's important. It's hard on both sides, for children, for parents, but it's something that pays off in the future life.
It's the inevitable moment where a bird has to the mother bird throws its little chick out of the nest and it has to learn to fly.
Yeah.
So let's talk about your business experiences because you've had many interesting top executive positions, whether it was at Carlsberg, running that in Poland, or Biomed Lublin. And one of the topics that I really like to dig in on is transformation, because you've done quite a lot of transformation. If turnarounds could be considered a transformation, and obviously all the different eras and changes that have been coming into the workplace through the changes in tech, maybe through the prism of one of those transformational experiences, what actually makes transformation work? How do you how does one take a bull by the horns and make it happen? Because it seems to me, let's put this in another context, that the numbers show that maybe three-quarters of all transformation efforts fail, much like M&A fail, or a lot of entrepreneurs fail. So failure is sort of out there a lot. So what
Mm.
avoids the failure and what achieves the success?
Yeah, it's maybe not three quarters. I admit, I learned that it was more than 80%. So, but you are close. No, one experience here, I think that maybe the most rewardable experience I had is was when I was running Carlsberg in Poland, and we are quite mm, small comparing to our big two competitors. We 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 acquired three regional brewers, so it was like at the same time, two from one German brewer and one from a Polish entrepreneur. And so it was like, merging four companies, four regional companies. And it was like, I took one external company to make an assessment center. We selected top 100 people from 100 managers from four companies, and we are very clear about what we want to do. So I think one of the things is that you should really be clear and very open from the beginning, because otherwise, the risk is that you lose people, not the worst, but the best, because for them it's it's easier enough to find a new job, and when they feel uncertain, they just quit. So from the very beginning, we prepared the communication, and we said, okay, the first month we'll run this assessment centers, and we gave a very precise date. Day D, we will announce the new structure, not and the names in this new structure. And even though it was tough, because you think when you are in this top 100, okay, so I'm one of them, but there are four people for a
For the
given
same job.
position.
Yeah.
So, but it was very. I mean, if I remember, we didn't lose any of these managers during the process, and at the end, so we announced the new structure. It was painful for some because they had to leave, but the organizations what was set up, and we started very quickly, this integration process, and it was quite smooth. No, we were supported by Carlsberg headquarters, by at that time, we had BCG working with us, and after, I must say, it took about 3, maybe 6 months. We had, new organization that, started, to deliver, over deliver. And that was my longest experience, by the way. With Carlsberg, I spent almost 10 years, and that was uh, end of year one when we made this acquisition. And from the company, that was, which was losing money, we became one of the stars within Carlsberg family. So, and when I still, meet people, my managers from that period, so they said, that was the best adventure of my life, and many of them, they went out of Carlsberg and made careers, very successful careers, but. Uh, you know, so coming back to your question, openness, to be clear and take tough decisions, and that's something that I must say from my professional experience that it sounds easy, but it's very uncommon. The courage and this decision-taking process. That's something that not many top managers have.
Few of the things that I heard you say, Marcin, as to why it was successful, you dropped in a consultancy, so BCG, and to what extent was that a critical element of success?
No, the consulting companies, they are strong in designing processes, and I must say, personally, I'm okay with that because I'm more spontaneous, and I don't like spend time on prepare. Scheduling things, but it's more like I feel this is the way to go, and then let's go. Obviously, it's I talk to the managers and we share our views on that. But once we feel something is good, so we go for that. BCG or McKinsey, because I worked a lot with both companies, they give you this framework, and they said okay, so this is the process. So one, two, three, four, five, and they put it in a time frame. So that's helpful because designing, coming back to to this assessment center, designing a process where you select let's say 30 managers are out of 100, and the process leading to these decisions. uh, I mean, it's you can imagine, but it's important to also to put it in a written form and to communicate. So that was very helpful. On the other hand, just being more general about the consultancy companies, I believe that with some experience and seniority, you don't really need them. And at certain stage of my career, I mean, I stopped working with consultants because I at one day I had a reflection. We had a workshop with them with my top team, and I said, I just wonder who should pay to whom for this learning experience.
Yeah, I'm sure lots of consultants learn in the process of consulting. Um, Second thing I heard you say with this group of 100 directors is this notion of co-creation or participating in the decision making with your transparency, the clarity of, or at least the openness. Maybe I use the word transparency, but the openness and the clarity. To what extent was the ability to co-create, to actively participate in it with some kind of honesty in that participation? Was that important in the success? And a second part of that is, to what extent did they actually self-select? Or did you, for the most part, have to push out people because they just, we couldn't, you couldn't have them fit in because they were the bad eggs, if you will?
Mm. Um, there's no self-selection. I believe that you sometimes it was like so these two or three guys for the same position. It's they're all good, and so it's not like black and white. So you sometimes sometimes I saw the potential. I say, okay, so we'll find another job for this guy. Because there are many positions, when you have 1,500 people in a company, so you obviously the number of senior positions so is also quite substantial. So we could offer for let's say a financial controller, we could offer him and propose another job in finance or outside finance. Uh, uh, and and that's also about being open. So it was like okay, so look, for this position, we selected another person, but if you are interested, I can offer you another job, and if you are interested, we can continue discussions. So and many people I could retain because they were brilliant people, and I said okay, I cannot cut off 75% of my top managers, since I would like to keep 75% and not 25. So it was like a compromise, but the support from headhunters who run this recruitment this assessment, and also from guys from the consultancy company that also, they supported, and because, having hundreds interviews, or even 200, because each of them was uh, had two interviews with the company and with the consultancy, or the headhunter. So that's time consuming. And then, you have, then when you interview different people for the same position, so you have to have this, the interviewers meetings that you discuss, and you take decisions. So, but the that was good that we had this time frame thing, that okay, so when you recruit people, you can do that forever, because you have always questions, but it's also important to take decisions at certain time, because as I said at the beginning, otherwise, the best people would leave you. So I remember that, when we announced the merger of the companies, it was like mid-August. By the end of September, we could announce, the whole organizational structures, including names.
It must have been quite the shakeup. The last piece I want to talk about before we get into your experience running LOT Airlines was this notion of culture. So you acquire all these new brands that all come with different cultures. You have your reigning Carlsberg culture from head office, presumably some elements of that. To what extent was the amalgamation really all about setting the culture? And how do you actually make culture shift?
Mm. Yeah, very, very good one. The people from running regional breweries, they're very, very proud of, their brands, local brands, because they were leaders in the local regions, and did it forever. And it was like, how to combine, especially, with the departments like, sales department. They were supposed to sell, all the brands. How to cope with them. And hopefully, Carlsberg brand came as a sort of common
Denominator.
uh, denominator, and it was not nobody was jealous about it, because it was a different brand. They were running regional brands, and it was an international brand. So the thing is that, that drove many decisions, like, changing the name of the company into Carlsberg Poland, because there were four different names. And nobody had a problem with Carlsberg Poland, because it's a common denominator, right? It was also, moving the headquarters to Warsaw, uh, because they were in four different parts of Poland, and we had four offices, and then we created a new one, from scratch in Poland, in Warsaw. Uh, and it was also, a way that, the launch or relaunch of Carlsberg brand, that was a big event, because, we took, at that time I had 500 salesmen, and we took all of them by ferry boat to Bornholm, the Danish island on the Baltic Sea. And we had a big event, and it was all around Carlsberg brand. And they went back, home with nice jerseys of, Liverpool, because at that time Liverpool was sponsored by Carlsberg, so it was like
Go
big
Reds, go
Carlsberg.
Reds.
uh, and they were, I mean, it was, fully integrated company at that time. And it was this event, they gave, and also, I brought, marketing director from Carlsberg, who was also, a fan of Liverpool, and we had, a really, really nice event, and it started to fly after this Bornholm meeting.
Sometimes what I feel is I get stuck in it's very complex culture. It's complicated to put in place. But it also, if you just take it with a little bit of lightness, légèreté, as we say in French, then maybe that can also be a way through. Let's chat about LOT Airlines for the last few minutes we have together, Marcin. So you take over a lot. It's in a pretty dull or dim position at taking over, as I understand it, close to bankruptcy or maybe even in bankruptcy protection. It's the national airline, and I can only imagine that that must have been a pressure hot position, probably even political. Uh, how did you take on board? Why did you take it on board, and how did it go?
Yeah, that was, I must say, that maybe my toughest professional experience. And it's because of the ownership. And I must say that, over time, I realized that, you know, the the government is the worst owner of the company. You can imagine, public, private, whatever is great, but the government, state-owned company is completely different. And after spending at that time, it was like 25 years of experience with different multinational companies. And then you jump into a company which is, in terms of values or whatever you think about, is completely different. Unions that are empowered because they feel that, they are strong because of the ownership structure. And I must say that, business wise, it was exciting, fantastic adventure. It's really, the drivers of the business. So many in the aviation industry that you don't find in FMCG or energy sectors. It's really fantastic. But your employees, your management, sometimes they are so tough with you that you just wonder whether you play in the same team. So to give you an example, it's like General Patton said, there are three kinds of decisions. Yeah, yes, no, I don't know. But in the corporate life, uh, there was decision is no decision, and in government state owned the government owned companies, the best decision is no decision. And when you have to take a decision, then you produce papers, to fill, the cupboards of, different ministers because, they have to be covered. And that's it. It's a pity because, when I was told that, my objective is not only to, to save from the bankruptcy, but to privatize the company. And I believed that what I was told that it's true, but after that I realized that they will do anything not to privatize, and it's a sort of, it was sort of mission impossible. So business wise, again, it was like we were the first company in Europe to to have Dreamliners, and that was at the end of my mission. I managed to bring first Dreamliners to Poland, and also there were a lot of huge improvements, but it's like looking right now the current state of the company. It's like all these former state monopolies, like British Airways, Air France, Lufthansa. Lot that the similar challenges is that sometimes you want to do things that you feel are logical, and then you have a internal resistance which is huge. And and when you look on the this say low cost companies, they have completely different business models, but also in terms of personnel, they don't have this legacy of former monopolies, and even though the companies I mentioned, most of them are private, but still the heritage, the legacy, the values or the culture remains the same.
Mm. For someone, we just talked about wearing a Liverpool shirt with Carlsberg emblazoned on it. That's a lot of fun. Recently, I was lucky enough to represent Britain in a paddle tournament against America. And that provides not just the fun, but also a little bit of weight on the shoulders because I'm playing paddle to represent my country. Wearing the CEO hat of your Polish Airlines, I have to imagine there was a little bit of pride involved as well. I mean, or it seems like the equivalent of playing for your country to actually run the national Polish Airlines.
Yeah, that was unique. You are completely right. There is I mean, despite this internal challenges and stress, huge stress that you have internally, but externally, you have, I mean, this red carpet because your lot is part of Star Alliance, part of IATA, part of European Association airline industry, and when wherever I went, and there were, I mean, I spent once I calculated, I spent 160 days a year in a plane going around the world, including most of my weekends. and I mean, there are places like China, US, Japan that you have a red carpet when you go out of the plane, and that's something that they take your passport in the plane. I said, uh, you will give it back once you are in a hotel. And so there is this prestige of representing the nation, and obviously you are proud to represent your airline and your country, and this outside world is it's much much different from what you live internally.
I can just imagine. I mean, you're just talking about the best decision is no decision from their perspective. You're trying to actually make shit happen, and you're probably getting backlogged a lot. Yet, so going outside, you would have to negotiate, as you must have done for the Dreamliners, with Boeing and or Airbus. You don't presumably get the same kind of red carpet if you are, let's say, I don't know exactly the ones that are the biggest, but you're not the biggest airlines. You might have been the fastest growing once you got out of bankruptcy. But how do you approach a negotiation with such a titan? Because that's almost it's basically a duopoly, right, between Boeing and Airbus. How do, how do you get accepted there? And what makes for a successful negotiation at that type of level, Marcin?
Hmm. Yeah, that was Boeing was late with all Dreamliners deliveries. So we were supposed to get them, before my arrival, and I spent 2 years with Lot. It was just at the end that we finally got them, and there were different, challenges like engines, which are not of part, not part of Boeing delivery. By the way, it's interesting what I learned in this industry is that you know when you buy a car, you buy a car. When you buy a plane, you don't buy a plane, you buy the frame, and then you buy motors from another company, and you buy seats from another company, and then you combine them, and they deliver you. But you negotiate. You have many negotiations with engine delivery producers, with Boeing, with seats producers. So and the internal design is so different that sometimes you spend more time to with negotiating terms with not Boeing but other suppliers than with Boeing. But
Marcin,
coming back to
I
yeah.
just want to interrupt because that's something that I've noticed so often as like you, I've traveled an enormous amount. And I'm mystified, and this is you seem to have answered the question. I'm mystified as to how poorly designed these internal planes are. Either poorly designed for the flight attendant, they have to lean over and it's awkward, this and that, or the button that you need to maybe recharge your phone is some sort of ridiculous backpedaling and you're sort of
Yes.
breaking your back to get to it. It's hard, I'm sure, doing design when you have so many people to cater to, but it seems like that would explain why so many airplanes, even in higher classes, are poorly designed. Is that something you would reflect?
Yeah, exactly. And it depends very much on who is taking decision, because in terms of seats, you either give it to marketing people or to finance people. And depending on who decides, the outcome is completely different.
It
So
seemed like every conversation I've had with flight attendants is that they are never included in the conversation. And yet, their experience, if you make everything a pain in the ass, there's no space for people to get through when they go to the loo, it inevitably will irritate them. And
mm,
and and they are the ones that are delivering the service and the humanity of your airline in on board. And if that's
mm,
not happening and they're not overly joyful, well, you're going to get those pouty faced, unhappy flight attendants.
exactly. And one of the toughest decisions is that, when you have a big plane flying on long haul, so you have a few classes, first, business,
Premium
premium
economy.
economy, you can imagine. And then, Boeing asks you, so how many seats in the first class? How many seats in the business class? What is the size of the seat? And then, it's that, okay, I thought, I was buying a plane, but no, I have to decide basically about everything. And it's tough because if you make a mistake, then, your economies are finance are completely different. And, and obviously, it also changes, over time. The number of seats in the business class, first class, but you buy and exploit a plane for at least 10 years, if not 15 or 20. So then, obviously you you can change, but it's it's costly and time consuming. So at the beginning, you really you bet a lot on, and you have different assumptions, and I just mentioned seats, but it's about just everything, about how you mentioned flight attendants, where where they sleep, how much space versus what you give to your staff versus to your customer. Because it's the same space, so it's one is bigger uh, or smaller, but there's an impact on the other.
And you got the unions to deal with. All right. Well, Marcin, it's been great. I overrun my welcome. I've really enjoyed our chat. Maybe we could close with a word of wisdom, Marcin, for all your experience, whether it was at Carlsberg Polska, Biomed, Lublin, Lot Airlines, Total, even. What kind of advice would you have for someone who's listening who has ambitions to be a top leader, top manager, who knows, even CEO? What do you think is the most important advice for that type of individual?
The most important is your team. And in order to have a good team, you have to be very open, transparent, courageous, and and it's not only about people. I remember, once I had a chance, to meet Jack Welch, and I asked him the question, what makes that, your CEO is successful? And he said, basically, the underlying assumption is that, if you are at the top, you are intelligent enough. So that's given. But there are two things, your team and the luck.
Hmm.
And that's something, based on my experience, you also need. And with the similar approach with strong teams, sometimes you are successful, sometimes you are not. But with your people, you have to be very, very open, courageous, you know, uh, and uh, and coming back, to the decisions. You take decisions. It's not like you don't at any time. You won't have all elements to to take decision, but it's like a striker. When you get a ball and you have less than 1 second to take a decision. If you start to think about left, right, shoot, whatever, then I mean, your time is over. So it's like, being be courageous in taking decisions, and really take people who are better than you. And
We're going to finish then, Marcin, on a statement I often say, but I think you might even disagree with it. But I usually say, and in every language that I speak, it's true, that luck comes before work only in the dictionary. I don't know if that's true in Polish.
that's a nice saying.
Yeah, anyway, I don't know the words, but fortune par rapport au travail, trabajo, la fortuna. And so, anyway, Marcin, uh, dziękuję. Thank you so much for spending the time with us to talk about your experience. Where's your next ultra marathon? What are you preparing for?
uh, yeah, it's Great Silk Run. It's 300 kilometers through Tajikistan from Afghanistan to China. It's like, always challenge yourself, an adventure with basically it's no competition, winners or losers, but it's another nomadic migration for people who love adventure.
Love it,
Thank
Marcin.
you. Thank
Thank
you,
you,
Minja,
sir.
so much.
Bye
Thank
bye.
you. Bye.